And now we're going to be talking with Nick Jushchyshyn about Unreal Engine. There's so many opportunities to, of where we can go with Unreal Engine. A lot of us are talking about, satire and education and entertainment and all of these other things. But we got to get started. And again, you saw us use Unreal Engine for Zoom at NAB. But one of the things that we're really committed to is giving people the opportunity to get off the ground. Like, how do we actually get a lot of us off the ground? Because we know that as a group, if there's 30 or 40 or 50 of us all doing it and we're trading notes, our ability to grow will go much faster. So we're starting with an introduction. We're going to keep on coming back to Unreal Engine and keep on showing first how to get started, but also how to take full advantage of it, how to add motion capture, how to add facial capture, how to add all of these things. And Nick Jushchyshyn is the perfect person to walk us through this. Nick, it's good to have you back on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Absolutely. If you'd like me to get started, I can, let's share the screen for the folks. And there's a couple of things that I like to share in terms of mindset with Unreal. Hopefully you're seeing this Epic Games screen in the share. One is that Unreal Engine is part of an ecosystem. So I wouldn't treat it like Microsoft Word or Keynote or something like that, where it's the one and all encompassing tool. It's part of an ecosystem. And the first thing that you end up installing when you go to the website and you say, I signed up with my email, I want to install Unreal Engine, is you're going to install this Epic Games launcher. And that's kind of your gateway to the ecosystem. The big value to this is all of the free content, so that you never have to start out with like opening up Unreal and ending up with nothing more than a gray square and having, where do I start from that? One of the things about this marketplace that's in this launcher, you'll land on like a news page like this, but go to the marketplace, and every month there's going to be free content that's announced. So you can always acquire this to your email account, and it's yours forever. Even if you don't download it, you can go back to it and download it later.
And you're wondering, why do they do that? Well, it's because it gets you to visit all the time. You got to keep checking in. You got to keep that monthly active user number really high, because you do miss out. Like, you're not going to get that free again.
Exactly. And I mean, if I go into, for example, the library panel, down here is the vault. This is everything that I've acquired, and it's pretty extensive. It's like, and most of this is stuff that was free for the month over the course of the last several years. There's certainly a number of things that they're permanently free and that are demo things, but it's just tremendously valuable. So for right now example, there's a Mediterranean ecosystem type of a scene here that's free. And normally this would be a $150, $160 purchase. Yeah. But here you've got this.
And that's a whole scene that you can just throw in. So you don't have to learn how to model it. You don't have to learn how to build trees. You simply just download that, and it's going to be in Unreal, which is just kind of an amazing.
Exactly. The sea is set up, the landscape, and all of that sort of thing. And so as an example, I'm actually going to start out with something like that, in that in the marketplace, there's also a permanently free collection of things. And one of the permanently free things that's really kind of handy to start with is it's a park. So I usually just go into the search and I type in the word park, I hit enter, and initially you get all the stuff that's for purchase, but there's a max price filter here, and you can push free. And there's these two city park environments. And one of them is a full collection, and that's the one I'm going to show today. But I also just wanted to share, if you have kind of an underpowered machine, you can always go to, there's one that's light. It's really lightweight. It's like about a gig of a download, and it'll get you a very similar scene, but just not quite as extensive as what I'm about to show. But when you go into the marketplace, I mean, this is free. If you haven't acquired it yet for your own account, then it'll have a button here that says free. And once you've clicked that, it's now yours. And then you can hit create project, and that will prompt you for, all right, where on your computer do you want that project to be? What do you want to call it, etc. I'm not going to create that now, but that's all it takes to create the project itself. And from that point on, if I go into my library, here's City Park Lite. I already downloaded that, and I have the full version here. And then I could double click this and open this. And so this is everything that's on my computer right now in terms of different versions of Unreal, as well as some of the projects. But just to show that city,
I will say that people are going to ask, hey, is there a Mac version? There is, but I wouldn't use it. So like it is like this is I will say that this is one of the few things we're showing you that is, it's PC, and I would highly recommend using a PC for it. The Mac version is not. I know that they're trying to get better at it, but I don't. Nick, you can let me know if it's gotten any better. But I still think that it's really geared toward the PC infrastructure.
Yeah, I think to be fair, it has gotten better. The current code base is compiled for Mac Silicon, and if it's running a little chunky for you on a Mac, you can go over to settings and engine scalability and kind of dial it. You could go to low or whatever, and so it'll run faster. It'll just not necessarily use all the highest quality graphics that it's set up for, and no matter what, the high-end graphics features of Unreal are, under the hood, coded to leverage RTX, Nvidia RTX GPUs. And since those don't operate on Macs, that's where you're better to have a PC with an RTX board, and then you'll get all the goodness. And you can have a standard consumer board. I mean, it could be a 4060, it could be a 3070, 3080, anything that's a reasonably modern RTX board is going to work well for you on a PC. And so I definitely think that the experience of getting started with this is much smoother and much more enjoyable when you're on a PC.
So how do I get it installed?
So to install, you'll just go to the web, and I guess you could search for Unreal Engine. Unreal Engine, there we go. And this is the main website. And if you haven't logged in yet, you'll want to create yourself an account and log in. And once you've logged in, you can use this download button, and you'll be downloading the launcher installer. And well, I just did it. It's like, I'm ready to go ahead and install now. But just be aware that what you're installing is this tool right here, which is the Epic's game launcher. So it's not Unreal Engine itself. Once you've got the launcher installed, of course, Epic Games, games is in their name. The default page you'll land on is a game installing page, but you'll see on the left side Unreal Engine. So you click on that page. And in library, if you don't have any Unreal Engines installed, you'll want to click this plus button.
And you're using 532, not 542?
I have that set as my default. I'm actually using 542 now. So I just haven't, I should just make this my default. So options, set current. There we go. There we go. That'll be my default now. I mean, I just have quite a few projects in backlog. So I keep several back versions around so that I can still open them natively. But 542 is quite stable and runs really well. So this is the version that I'm using right now.
Now, if you have questions for Nick for whatever we're talking about or just Unreal in general, go ahead and throw those into Makana, or you can go to askofficehours.global. I'll open the Dropbox there. But let's go ahead and jump into the handful of questions we have, and then we'll come back and continue here. So let's go to the first question.
Sounds great.
First one comes from Jeffrey Reyes in the Bronx, New York, and he wonders, Nick, what GPU are you using for Unreal, and do you prefer the professional Quadro cards versus the mainstream GeForce cards?
Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, so I think that the GeForce cards are just fine if you're working on your own desktop, and that's great. So GTX 40 series, of course, is the newest series, and the best of those that you can afford is going to do well for you. I mean, basically, you're getting more processors and more memory. The heavier duty that board is. Personally, I am using a Quadro A6000, so that has 48 gigabytes of RAM. It's got a lot of processing power. But to be fair, I'm using that in a studio. So I'm integrating with the big thing about the Quadro boards is they're capable of Genlock synchronization. So I can have a Genlock signal from my entire, Blackmagic ecosystem going into the Quadro sync board, and that means that the Quadro board is going to be generating frames in perfect synchronization with the frames of the camera. I'm not using that this second for that, but that's why.
And why is that important?
So if you're going to be mixing live action with virtual scenes generated from Unreal, you want the frame cadence from Unreal to be exactly matched to the shutter of your camera. And so that's why that's important. If you're shooting green screen, you want those backgrounds that are being generated to fill in the green screen to be in exact sync with the camera.
Otherwise, you might see a shutter between the two, right? Like where as the camera's moving, the background is moving in the camera shot because it's not quite lined up frame for frame.
Exactly. So when we're shooting here, we will track our camera with a Vicon motion capture system that's receiving the same Genlock signal. So that's Genlocked, and its data is linked to the same frame rate. And it's not just the rate, it's like the precise instant that the frame is opening and closing. All of the hardware in our pipeline is aware of that. And so that way, each time the camera moves, Vicon tracking data is being updated the same way, and that's feeding into Unreal Engine. Unreal Engine's generating its frames the same. Now, there may be a 1 or 2 frame delay, but that delay will be absolutely consistent. And then in the Ultimate, we can dial in, all right, do we want to delay the live camera by 1 frame, 2 frame, 5 frames, whatever it is. And once we've got that delay locked in, it's locked in for the duration of the day. So that's really why the Quadro is that you can enable that synchronization. And that's just not available in the consumer boards. But that's not a problem at all if you're doing motion graphics work, because you can generate your motion graphics and all those overlays that can go into your constellations, that can go into your A10 minis, et cetera. And the mini will buffer that and synchronize everything after the fact. And you're not looking for frame synchronization there because you're not syncing to a camera. You're just putting graphics over your imagery.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, one question for you, Nick, that relates to this is about the RAM. When buying a RTX board or an RTX-enabled laptop that has a discrete GeForce chip on the motherboard, it comes with a certain amount of graphics memory, the dedicated graphics memory. Can the the RTX boards share memory with the CPU, or does it have to be discrete onboard memory that's dedicated to the GPU?
Well, the GPU memory is optimized for speed and for parallel accessing by the GPU processors. So you can kind of share, but it's kind of like when you're caching from RAM memory to a spinning hard drive. You're slowing things down. So the more memory that's on the GPU, the more of your 3D scene can be loaded into the GPU itself. And then the processors there can access that at a much higher rate than they can by reading out of RAM and traveling across the motherboard bus and all of that. So that's why you really want to maximize the memory that you can, based on what you can afford. The more memory on your GPU, the more of your scene can be loaded directly into the GPU and then have immediate access by those processors.
Whereas a lot of us.
Sorry, I was just going to say. So in a pinch, you could use the system RAM, but you may lose latency. You may increase your latency.
You'll increase latency that way. Absolutely, right. Absolutely.
Yeah. The irony is, of course, a lot of us feel like the Macs would do really, really well because they've integrated the CPU and the GPU and the RAM all into one thing. But, it hasn't been written to yet by Unreal or by Epic. Next question.
Aaron Cody in St. Louis, Missouri has this one. What is an Unreal Engine technician typically called on a crew? Where does their rate fall compared to, for example, a graphics op, a cam op, an engineer in charge, and or a technical director?
So, of course, that's all going to vary from show to show. Often, they get different names. Sometimes they are graphics operators, AR operators, technicians. There's also on a dedicated virtual production set where Unreal Engine is being used extensively, that might be considered part of the virtual art department or the VAD. There's a variety of different titles and roles. Obviously, someone who is decades-long union experienced camera operator is going to be actually, their salary is just, negotiated by the union. There is some unions, I think IST maybe represents some digital artists on some studios, and so those scales are there. But I don't want to quote any dollar values, honestly, but I will say that I had a student who just recently graduated, and they were hired by a high-end production company that they've done major global level sports and events, and they negotiated a really nice salary, literally more than double what I made when I got out of college. So it seems like that's starting. That was she graduated and landed that job right out of college. So it goes up from there depending on experience. So if it's a gig, obviously someone's going to be negotiating their own contract, and it's going to be based on experience, skill set, and the importance of that to the production.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Rob Collins in Kansas City, Missouri. Is the Unreal launcher inside the same program as the Epic Games Store, or is it separate from the games?
So it is the same program. The launcher is the same program as the store. So if my screen share is on right now, you'd be seeing the launcher. The store is this top tab on the left, and the Unreal Engine page is in this same launcher app. Now, I could get rid of the store page if that's distracting to my ADD. I can go ahead into settings and hide the game library, and then I won't need to worry about that. So that's always an option. But this launcher is kind of your gateway to the Unreal Engine or full Epic Games ecosystem. This is also, by the way, where you would go to get and install Reality Capture, which we covered a month or two ago. And Twinmotion is their architectural tool. And then ultimately the library in the marketplace here under the Unreal Engine tab is both for sale assets for Unreal Engine from various artists, and also a really massive free library of assets that you can put to use in Unreal. So yeah, that's all that one program.
And one thing you want to notice is how many products that Epic puts out for free. I mean, Unreal or Reality Capture used to be pretty expensive. It used to be kind of painful to pay for, and now it's basically free to use. Are they charging for anything now, Nick, for Reality Capture?
So if you as an individual or as an organization, your revenue is over $1 million, then there is a annual license of I think it's $1,800, and that gets you the whole suite of all the tools for the year. But for myself, for example, I don't make $1 million a year, so all of this is free for me to use. And also, of course, if you're learning for yourself, so if you have $1 million and this is your hobby, it's free. And if you are an independent contractor, or also, by the way, if you're an educator or a student, all of it is available free within the context of teaching and learning. It's
just a really great business model, of allowing everybody, saying eventually, if you're a big company, that's where the money is. So let's have you guys pay the licenses. But if you're a smaller company, this is all stuff that you can just, a smaller company or an individual, we're going to let you get off the ground. I think that more companies would do well to think about that business model. Next question.
Aaron Cody is back from St. Louis, Missouri with this. Between the RTX and Quadro brands merging and various other branding changes, NVIDIA's GPU nomenclature has become quite confusing. Which NVIDIA GPUs are best for Unreal Engine if Genlock is a requirement?
Good, Nick.
So if Genlock is a requirement, you have to have a board that's compatible with I think it's the Quadro Sync board. I think it's Quadro Sync 2 is the current version of that. So that I believe that's still the Quadro board. So I don't know all of the newest, latest, greatest. I'm still, recovering from the requisition for the A6000. So I'm not in a position to ask for anything else now.
He's like, I can't wait to stop eating rice.
There we go. But yeah, it's the Quadros that are able to support that sync, that Genlock sync signal. And again, you only need that if you're absolutely synchronizing live action with what the frames that you're generating from Unreal. So if you're using an LED wall or projection wall background, or if you're using green screen compositing, that's where that Genlock is really, really important.
Go ahead, Nick. Let's go ahead and jump back into the demo.
Okay. So I downloaded this scene, and this is essentially what it looks like. I'm just using my mouse to move around. One of the things I thought I'd share is that I activated the frames per second on this. And so right now I'm getting a little over 70 frames per second. And
how do you get the scene into Unreal?
So to get the scene into Unreal, I started out in the marketplace, and I searched for Park. And then I clicked on free. And then I acquired this. If this says free, then you haven't acquired it yet. You click on free and then create project.
And that's it. And then it'll open up.
That's it.
Got it. If Unreal's already, and does it automatically open one of the, so if you have default at 5.4.2 and you hit create project, it's going to open that default with that project.
Exactly. So once that was copied to my computer, it became available here in the My Projects. Right. And I specifically asked it to download for 5.4. And so this is the version that I have open. I double clicked on that, and then that opened up. I think a couple things that are worth mentioning is that Unreal Engine is a rather extensive library of software. So when you don't have any Unreal Engine installed, you click this plus button, it adds it, you pick your version, you hit install. I'm going to X this out. That's going to take a long time. Like that might be something you run overnight, or make sure you have a lot of coffee or lots of tutorials or music, something to do, because it's going to be a long time to install. And then after it's installed all its code on your computer, the first time you launch it, it's literally going to compile itself for the hardware on your machine. So for your specific CPU, for the GPU you have installed on your machine. So that very first time you launch it, it's going to take a good bit of time. It could take more than an hour as it gets through that. But it's only that first time, because it's compiling and optimizing itself for the specific hardware on the machine that it just discovered itself on. After that, it should run pretty quickly. Now, it should be noted that some of these projects, the assets operate the same way. So when you first download the assets, it's all the raw material. It's the textures, it's the geometry and everything. But one of the things that allows Unreal Engine to get the frame rates that it does, I've got thousands and thousands of leaves in view right now, but I'm still getting over 40, 50 frames a second here. What's happening is, when I opened the project for the first time, all of the shaders were compiled for the GPU that's on this machine. And so that very first time that I opened this project, it took a little while, maybe 15, 20 minutes. And all of that might be frustrating for a first-time user. It's fine. It's only the first time. And then when you open it up from then on, it's going to go quickly. And all of that, like a 15-minute time frame for me, like with Maya rendering with Arnold, or even something like Redshift, like it could take that much time to render a single frame or just a couple of frames. So I'm certainly willing to wait that time on the front end, so that now I'm rendering frames in 20 milliseconds at a time, and I'm measuring render times in 40, 50 frames per second, as opposed to 2 frames per 15 minutes.
This is a lesson in effective use of coffee breaks and little walks and telephone calls and everything else. It's funny that the older CG artists like myself and Nick, I don't want to say you're one of the older CG artists, Nick, but we're close to the same. we learned very quickly how to use coffee breaks and lunch breaks and overnights and everything else. That's when you have the computer do the work, and then you go do something else. You don't sit there and stare at it. You just go wander off, and that time doesn't count as long as you had something else to do. And now you have TikTok. You can easily watch. Take 15 minutes will just disappear just like that. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
I wondered, how important is your disk's access speed, and how much space do you need to set aside for storing the different Unreal engines and your different projects on? And what's the optimum speed for those SSDs that hopefully you'll be using to store all this information on? I mean, if it's 300 kilobits per second versus 3,000, does that make a huge difference in the amount of time it takes to load and render any of this stuff or create these projects?
I mean, it will make a difference in how long it takes to load. But again, Unreal is optimized to put as much of the scene onto the GPU memory as possible. So we wouldn't be getting this 40, 50 frames a second if it was accessing the scene off of any SSD. So it's all operating live off of the GPU right now. So I mean, I usually get the standard SanDisk Ultra SSDs. I'm trying to reach into a bag here on my desk to see if I can put my hand on an SSD. So, so I have the first one I pulled out was an Extreme Pro. These work fine. I also have some of the Ultras. I mean, I have a stack that's about this high right now in a bag. I definitely would recommend starting out with if you would have to have at least 100 gig available to install Unreal Engine and get a first project going. I could go into my browser right now and just take a quick look at what the size of this Park project is. So I downloaded the light version of that project and fully extracted. That's only 2 gigs. So that's no big deal.
So it's not a huge amount of space.
Not for the project itself.
And so you don't have to wait, waiting for it to load off of a disk that's hanging off a USB 3 port or something is not going to be a major problem. You won't have to have it on a NVMe drive, for example, internally.
Yeah, I mean, the engine itself is going to take a good bit of space, and they have recommendations. I don't know what this is going to land at, but it's going to get to, probably, it might get over 100 gig. I don't know. I have a lot of stuff in there. So you definitely, there we go. The engine itself, the current version 5.4 landed at just about 40 gig. So, if you only have 100 gig of space available, that's kind of tight to getting started with Unreal Engine, because everything that you find and enjoy in this marketplace is some number of gigs. And every time you choose to bring one of these things onto your computer, what is happening is it's downloading a compressed cache. So there is somewhere in here a cache location. So this is taking up some space on my C drive right now. And then after it's downloaded the files from the server, it then passes them on to either a project file or putting that stuff into your project as well. So it doesn't take long to fill this up. I usually tell my students if they're entering in one of my classes that they should have a minimum of 100 gig, but really, 250, 500 is for long-term use is going to be better. Because
can you designate which drive that cache goes on? Because if you've got, in my systems, I've got eMMC memory and I've got NVMe drives, and some are 10 times faster than the main C drive. Can you designate where to put that cache to your faster drive so you'll have better performance?
Yeah. So here I am in the launcher. If I go to settings down here in that lower left-hand corner, there's an edit vols cache location, and you can put this on any drive connected to your computer at all.
Internal or external. So you could have your cache drive as an external drive.
Absolutely. And you can install the engine on an external drive as well. Mm-hmm. So that, and it coexists with its other versions very nicely. I mean, as you could see, each version is self-contained in its own folder. Right. And all of this could be on an external drive instead of on the C drive if you so chose.
We have one question and then we'll jump back in. Go ahead. Next question.
Aaron Cody from St. Louis is back with this one. Have you found advantages or disadvantages between various brands of PCIe cards, Blackmagic, AJA, and others?
So I haven't tried out the AJA cards myself, but I'm kind of addicted to the Blackmagic Decklink boards, and some of that is the price point, right? So a lot of times I can get 2 or 3 Decklink boards for the price of a AJA, and I have not had any issue with the main Decklink boards. There is a web page, I think, if you Google Unreal Engine Decklink compatibility, there's a list of the ones that are declared compatible, and I have not had an issue with any of those. So I generally use Decklink Duo or Decklink Quadro for Unreal Engine work. And the nice thing about that is those boards have multiple SDI connections. So you can use those to ingest video live into Unreal Engine, or have Unreal Engine output both RGB as well as a alpha channel mask, and that can be used on constellations and such for keying. So that's personally what I've been using. I just haven't tried the AJA stuff yet.
Next question.
Next one comes from Eric Cody again in St. Louis. What trends have you seen in the quality of assets available in the Unreal Engine marketplace? Is AI junk creeping in?
There is a certain amount of that. I mean, I guess I just ignore it. I mean, I kind of gravitate towards scenery that I feel like I might be able to use in virtual production settings. So personally, what I'll tend to do, let's say there's a sale. Okay, so there's a Spotlight sale right now. So I'll click on the Spotlight sale. And a lot of times what I'll do is search on price high to low. And then I will click on the discount 50% off or more. So now I know I'm saving the most, right? So here's a $900 package for $450. Do I think I'm going to do virtual production in medieval settings? That might be worth considering. Probably not. But this higher end material in the environments tends to be very, very good. This one studio, Lee Arts Studios, is well known for their high quality assets. The nice thing is they also are often on sale. So, a lot of times I'll keep an eye out for those. And so there's a variety of packs. Decagon is another one that shows up quite a bit. So, if I were to search from low to high, there's a lot of what looks to me like AI generated 2D imagery, and like, oh, here's a whole library of images of ninjas. And like, I don't know why I would want to get that for Unreal Engine. It's in the marketplace, but I'm probably not going to buy that myself. Some of the other things that are really useful in here are animation, right? So I can go to Browse and I can go to Animations and very quickly download animation that's already baked onto the standard Epic Games.
And you can
skeleton.
have it, and the key here is that you can have it, there's a standard, the mocap will come in on a body, but you can very easily retarget that to whatever character you might have there.
Exactly. So anything that's, a lot of characters are compatible with the Epic skeleton. So Epic is standardized on this skeleton, and the skeleton for what they call their mannequins is essentially identical to that of the metahumans. So as an example, I can just show that right now. If I wanted to add the mannequin characters with some basic animations to my project, I just click the add button, say add feature to content, and I'm going to add third person. And this is just like a template if I wanted to create a third person video game. And I've already added that template here, and it gives me characters. And so here's the mannequins, right? So I go to meshes. Hopefully I'm still sharing screen and you're seeing all this.
Yep.
One of the things that I've also done here in this scene is I've created a metahuman. And so there's a metahuman of me. So I'll just drag myself out here. And
how meta. You're animating yourself.
Yeah, I'm going to animate myself, right? So there I am.
Hours t-shirt.
Office Hours t-shirt. And the only thing is,
I have to say, I never thought of using the logo like Tony Stark, in the center there. I've always thought the logo would be over one side. I think you've defined how we're going to do that. Look, that looks great.
There we go.
All right.
So, one of the things is if I were to create an animation right now, it's called a level sequence. And I double click. Now I've got my timeline and I've got my metahuman selected here. And so I'm going to add myself there. The body gets a rig and I could keyframe it, but I want to use some of the animation from the mannequin. So I'm just going to delete the rig. And instead, I'm going to go back to my mannequin. And I just want to tell the mannequin, hey, by the way, you are indeed compatible with MetaHuman. So I'm just hopefully double clicking in here. I don't know why this is, there we are. I'll double click on the mannequin. There we are. And I'm going to go into the skeleton and just say, hey, retargeting, I want to add the MetaHuman to this. And so here's the MetaHuman based skeleton. And from now on, once I save this, Unreal Engine knows that this skeleton is indeed compatible with the MetaHuman. So when I go into my sequencer, I can add an animation, and I'm going to search for idle because there's an idle animation built into that mannequin. And so for male idle. And there we go. For some reason, this guy's in the back here. I don't need them. It's just...
Although it adds a whole new level of weirdness to have both of you moving at the same time.
There we go. Yeah, I think I accidentally added them to the scene.
Doppelganger.
But there we go.
So now if you play that, it's just a little bit.
Yeah. So now I'm moving around with that.
A little.
And I mean the other thing that's crazy about this is, the face is.
And what you're seeing there on the side of you is the face animation tools, right?
Exactly, right. That's the face animation board, but I don't need to use that, right? So I can delete that and I'll select my MetaHuman. One of the things I'm running here is on the side, I've got my iPad. Hi, iPad, right? This is my iPad and it's running Live Link Face. So that's tracking my face. And so if I set this aside, I will go to my MetaHuman.
So well. I've been doing this for so long and it was not this way all the time. I want you little whippersnappers to know we used to have to do this in the snow, going upside backwards. We had to track it. Then we had to send every single point. We had to do facial animation. We had to track it. We had to take the video and then send it to London. And then we'd wait for 2 days for London to send us back the records.
So yeah, so that's all. That works, So, and that's all that this takes. All of this is built in. I mean, there's a plugin called Live Link Face. That you just
now. Can it track your head movement as well, or is it just your face?
Technically, it is. Yeah, I have a video tutorial on it. The MetaHuman structure is designed around a professional mocap stage. And so with a professional mocap stage, you're using a Vicon system or OptiTrack, something like that, to drive all of the body movements. You're tracking the head with that.
Right.
So that's the default state. But I have a video on my website that shows how you can set it up so that this can drive the head rotations so that you could do desktop. I'm going to turn off this live link because it's kind of distracting to me.
So normally, can I get one?
Yeah, we're working on it. But now Nick has designed it there. If we can cut more to the Unreal stuff, that'd be great.
So normally, face tracking would be handled via a head-worn camera that moves with your head. Yeah,
and you can put your iPhone into that head-worn camera. There's a rig that you can put the iPhone on, right, to do this.
Absolutely.
You can use a camera, which you guys have, right? You have a camera, but it's not very high resolution. We
have a Faceware headset that has a bar, and the Vicon system will track the position of all of that. And there's a Faceware camera for that keeps the face in view. Or we can swap out the camera for an iPhone. And you can have multiple iPhones. Oops, I'm auto-saving. You can have multiple iPhones, and they're all going to be shown up by name, right? So if I go into Window, Virtual Production, Live Link, this would be a list of all of my data sources. So right now I just have my iPad, but if I were to activate a second device on the same network, that would show up here. And so I could have each individual person driving a different MetaHuman.
Right. A couple questions rolling in. Let's go to the next question.
First question comes from Douglas Carmichael. How well does Unreal Engine work on Mac OS versus Unity?
Nick.
So I don't know versus Unity. I generally haven't used Unity on a Mac. I did actually start with Unity on PC and then migrated myself over to Unreal Engine. Unreal Engine does work fine on a Mac. It's on a Mac so that you can develop games, you can develop user interfaces, kiosks, all kinds of things for the Mac OS as well as for iOS. So that, as an example, the LiveLink Face app that I'm showing here, this is developed in Unreal Engine on a Mac for iOS. And so that whole ecosystem exists and it works fine. The limitation is that you're just not able to leverage all of the graphics power of the RTX integrations. So there's some areas that are, there's Nanite. I think Nanite is coming or working on a Mac right now. So it's just that some of the high-end graphics isn't available on the Mac because it's optimized for the Nvidia GPUs. Another note is that the Blackmagic video input-output that works on the PC, it doesn't work on a Mac. So even if you've got Decklink board on your Mac, Unreal Engine on your Mac won't be able to see that.
Next question.
Kenny Hampton in Greenville, Illinois. What are the restrictions of using the purchased or free assets for commercial uses?
They're fine for commercial use. So it's everything that you acquire, whether it was with dollars or at no charge from the marketplace, is licensed for use in Unreal Engine. I think the main terms are that you're not supposed to bring it into Unreal Engine, export it, and then use it in Cinema 4D or Maya and then render out of there. The intent is that you're using it within Unreal Engine to generate your end content. But you can absolutely use it for commercial use. Of course, you have to understand that others have access to that same thing. I have to say that, for example, there's a YouTube musician, Lindsay Sterling, who's amazing, and she had a release earlier this year, and the music video was all was virtual production used LED wall, and I actually used that music video in my virtual production class because so many of the scenes that were in that video were marketplace assets, and we had students actually working in the same scenes during that same quarter. So that's the one drawback, is that you would have to negotiate with the author if you're going to want exclusive use of some particular asset, and you don't want that showing up in someone else's content.
Yeah, but it's from a pre-visualization perspective, entertainment, education. There's a lot of just personal entertainment and a lot of other things there that I think that. It's kind of amazing that you can just and if it turns into something commercial, it's fine. And this is pretty much this is in the EULA when someone uploads something, right? It's not something they can choose to turn. What makes a lot of these marketplaces really fall apart is when you give the folks uploading the content lots of choices, because they create a lot of choices that creates market confusion. So I think that's one of the big advantages.
Absolutely. There's a lot of this content that you could use in training scenarios. And
if you look at this, if we cut to what Nick's showing here, this is
so this is free content from Epic, and I've actually used this in animation that is now in a series on Apple TV, right? So, a few years ago, I did an episode of an animated series focused on metahumans, and, there was a scene where a truck needed to go by. And so, this is the truck. This is all downloadable for free, available for
And the big thing is
use.
those trucks come in. One of the big advantages is, in general, the trucks coming in at the right scale. It's already, a lot of these things have already been rigged. They're already ready to do what they need to do, as opposed to, and that's rigging a human, definitely, but rigging some of these models could take days or weeks. So it's something that, when you're buying or downloading these, it is a huge advantage to be able to just download them and have them just ready to work inside the ecosystem.
Absolutely. And, there's this whole library of military equipment, both East and West, equipment here, and it's all joint rigged skeletons. I mean, I've used this A10 in animations, and the cockpit opens, and all of the flight surfaces. These are actually.
And when you say the cockpit opens, it opens in a. You have controls over it, like it's kind of built.
Yeah, you have direct control over it, and I mean. Again, I guess I could see what happens here. We can add it to the project here and see if it works here. Now it's saying that it's not prepared for 5.4, but I'm just going to go ahead and add it to the project anyway and see if we can play with it.
And while we're loading that up, we've got another question.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm waiting to see how you put an A10 into a medieval scene. Rion Smith in Trinidad in the West Indies says, "What's the largest project have you ever seen done with Unreal?"
It's difficult to quantify, so, I mean, a lot of the biggest episodic series that you might watch on streaming today uses Unreal Engine for some aspects of its production. LED wall virtual production is very, very extensive these days. There's a number of those studios because you can get all your performers into a single location and shoot in multiple locations virtually very quickly. So, entire seasons of Star Wars series, Marvel series, Amazon Prime series, et cetera, are shot on these things. Again, major broadcasts, live broadcasts like the Super Bowl. This past Super Bowl was simulcast both on NBC as well as Nickelodeon. And the Nickelodeon version had two cartoon characters, Patrick and SpongeBob, were the commentators. Well, they were live driven by actors wearing mocap suits, and those mocap suits were driving 3D characters in Unreal Engine. And anytime they had slime going out on the field or any kind of other effects happening over the broadcast, that was all being done in Unreal Engine. So it's difficult to really quantify because a lot of these stages, I mean, there's also films like, Batman, Paramount, the Star Trek series, a lot of the sets in that are just done on virtual production stages now. And those stages are so large that it requires multiple machines to render for the entire extent of the wall. So, and Fox Sports, if I remember correctly, has something like 24 rendering machines alone for an NFL broadcast because they're shooting LED wall as well as AR overlays, etc. So these are just some examples to hopefully address that question.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, when you're loading vehicles in like this that are pre-rigged, does the suspension and the wheels interact with your scene data, 3D scene data, so that as you're moving the vehicle through a 3D scene, does Unreal automatically handle, the suspension of the tires going over things that are in the background or in the, in the 3D scene that you're pacing them into?
Yeah, I would say that it's a automatic is a strong word. So it depends on how the creator rigged the asset itself. So I think this one is not set up to automatically necessarily interact. So, well, there's how big an A10 is in this park.
So if you were to animate it going down the stairs, it wouldn't necessarily.
Yeah, it's not going to necessarily bounce.
But physics are there. You could do it. It's that it's not
right.
I mean, the physics it's capable of physics. It's so
exactly.
Great. So they went through a warp hole and ended up landing in it.
Yeah.
Takeoff's going to be a problem unless that's VTOL.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. This is not a VTOL, but I mean, it was that quickly though that I could drop this in. And again, as Alex had mentioned, it's to scale. So if I wanted to sit myself in there, I could. And all these shaders are here. And the folks that actually authored this, I think this is an obsolete version of the A10 that was made for military training simulations. Right. So there is actually standard operating procedure simulation manual that's available as PDF to go with this model, and it describes how you can rig it and how to use it and all of that sort of thing. But yeah, just thought I'd share that. That's how we can bring in something else that wasn't part of this originally.
It's an interesting thing that the marketplace is there in the sense that one of the things that I think is that we see this with the Google market, not Google anymore, but the SketchUp marketplace, the warehouse, the 3D warehouse. But we also see it, I think you see some of this in Unreal. People are starting to realize, I should probably put my products in there for free that are all rigged and ready to go. So I think that there was KinoFlow in there, or there's a couple of them. There's some lighting in there that you can download people's products. If it's one thing for product companies to really think about is, I want people to do previs with my product. Maybe I could be wrong, but who was there? But I think that there's a really interesting opportunity to make sure that your products are represented here so that people can use them in previs. Like, hey, if I'm going to build a scene, if I can grab Airy lights or I can grab Nan lights or whatever those are, I might be more likely to buy them or rent them or whatever because I prevised everything with them and I know what they look like. And we've had situations where we brought stages in, and those stages include a lot of the stages include DMX. So you can have DMX going into Unreal and running the virtual lights that are there. And what's interesting about that is that you can have them running the virtual lights and you can tie the DMX to physical lights as well. So we've had situations where there's lights on for someone in front of a green screen, and those are being controlled by DMX. There's lights in the virtual world behind that's being comped into them, and those are controlled by DMX. And there's lights in a venue, and all three of them are happening together. And so you're having a whole 3 different lighting systems all running from the same board. So it's there's a lot of possibilities here. I mean, it's very powerful. You were showing these movie props. These are kind of simplified movie props, but they do give you a sense of what they could do.
These are the free ones, so that you could get these for free. But, again, for pre-visualization to throw them into place is useful. I think one of the other thing to note is that, what is it? Is it EIS? What's the lighting standard? I
ETC?
forget what it is.
Well, ETC is a board. Or DMX.
No.
DMX.
No, well, DMX is controlling. I'm actually thinking of, like, you could go to Philips or General Electric and actually get a file that tells you the projection pattern that this light fixture creates on the floor, on the wall. Let me just try this. Light and free. There's actually a whole library of them available.
The very first one said something like EIC up there on the very upper
Yeah,
left.
here it is. IES. That's
IES Light Profile Pack.
So, and by the way, there is a demo sample for the
DMX.
DMX integration here.
Yeah.
And so that all the fixtures, the movers and color changers and all that.
So those are all pre-built to do what they need to do what they're supposed to do.
Exactly. But I just thought I'd also show that, in a visualization scenario, you can go to ARI and actually get the IES files for just about every fixture they make, and copy that into the light for Unreal Engine, and you'll get the exact projection pattern that you can expect from that light.
That's useful.
Next question.
Next question comes to us from Gerald Vandereet in Eindhoven, Netherlands. How does that webcam tracking compare to a $30,000 Faceware system or even more expensive LTM TechnoProps system?
Or ILM TechnoProps.
Oh, ILM. I'm sorry, but misread that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Nick.
So, I mean, for are we talking about facial tracking then?
Yeah, he's talking about the facial tracking.
Yeah. So, a full professional system is going to utilize a lot more than just the camera itself, right? There's a very extensive calibration recording process, and usually, so I'm leaning towards the ILM part of the question, right? So they're going to capture raw video probably from stereoscopic cameras. So instead of a single camera, there's going to be 2 cameras on the headset, either over, under, or side by side. And that's going to get captured, and that's going to be reviewed as it gets captured. And then it'll be post-processed. Entire rigs will be bespoke made for those characters that are going to be, in this tentpole production that are going to be driven by this very expensive performer. So that's a process, right? So that's a professional, A-list type of production pipeline. So the webcam system using just the camera built into an iOS device is actually pretty good. I mean, it's not great. It's not like, would I use it as the final product for a major production? No. Even the piece that I did for that ended up on Apple TV, I ended up doing some tweaking and cleaning after the fact, but that's what I would do as an artist. And I didn't use the iOS, I used the Faceware for that. So I felt like Faceware using an HD camera was giving me like one step better than the iOS, although the iOS has had improvements. And there is also a new mode for the iOS app. Like right now, I'm using the live version of it, but there is something called MetaHuman facial capture, which does pure recording, and it does calibrate to the shape of your face. It's using the stereoscopic capture, the infrared capture in the device. And so it actually is a step up in quality versus just this web camera. So there are there's a whole spectrum of options and a whole spectrum of costs. I would say that given LiveLink Face as an iOS app is free and works great on, it works great on my iPhone. It works great on this iPad. It's ridiculous how good it is as a free tool. And it is exactly the tool that Epic uses creating their animations for Fortnite. And so anything that you see animated for Fortnite, if they had a live actor perform it, it went through this pipeline to get finished. Now, there could have been artists that were cleaning it up and doing more with it after the fact, but you get
and you can also record. You can record with your iPhone and put it into Faceware, right? There's a software that will process the video. So this is a live input, but you could set your camera to 240 frames a second at 1080p or whatever, capture it, and that oversampling is going to give you the ability to smooth out any issues and so on and so forth. So that oversampling. So that's another possibility as well.
And this software that you have up now, it seems to be tracking your eyelid movement, but not necessarily your eye contact, which is probably the most important.
I think it does.
Tracking information.
I think Nick just happened to be looking down, but I think if we look at it, I think it should be.
His eyes seem to be blacked out. I mean, pupillary contact,
that could
which
just
eliminates the uncanny valley problem.
Yeah, so I mean, I would say that you're going to be in the uncanny valley if you use this data raw on a photorealistic-ish person, right? But if I, move my eyes left and right, you should. So
it is tracking your pupils, although in the real-time indication that was showing on screen, it just had blacked out eyes. But okay.
I'm starting to think that character is very shifty.
Yeah.
Hey, he looks kind of shifty. Yeah.
Well, and again, for pre-visualization, for a lot of fun stuff, this is something that's nice and fast and quick. And let's cut to a couple quick questions before the end of the hour. Our next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. Can you use the timeline to create static scenes with marketplace assets to use as a backdrop for a live event? And how would you queue said scenes? Is there a QLab for Unreal Engine?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can do that. I mean, you're welcome to use these for broadcast. It's a commercial license. There is now in 5.4, there is a full motion graphics system that even has a rundown playlist so that you can queue on demand. And that playlist can also respond to HTTP commands. So you can slave that to something like Bitfocus Companion or other tools, or you could update other tools based on when you play cues in Unreal. And there are entire products that are developed from Unreal specific for broadcast. So zero density, Pixotope. There's quite a few of these products that were built specific for the broadcast industry that are built using Unreal Engine source code. So you can go to GitHub and download the entire source code for Unreal and create your own product. And, there's licensing terms for that. It's different, but it's there. But even out of the box, Unreal Engine has this functionality, and absolutely you can do those things.
Next question.
Next one comes from Gerald van der Riet, again in Eindhoven, Netherlands. How many different solutions have you had streaming data to Unreal Engine simultaneously at one time?
If data solutions, that could be just like JSON scores
or it could be DMX and motion capture and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is that the data is so small, like compared to everything else that you're doing. We have sent, I can tell you, I don't know how many Nick sent, but I've definitely sent into Unreal or something like it, I guess I would say something similar to it, over 150 channels of data. So it's a couple characters, because every character, if we do motion capture and we've got 3 or 4 characters, every character is generating, oftentimes between 55 and 60 points, the streams of content, or data that are going in. So that's one person is 55 to 60 points of information that's going in. Same thing that's going out with the face and everything else. So the data is really not that big of a deal. If you're bringing in video, that's one thing. But if you're bringing in raw data that's being applied to the characters, it's just a drop in the bucket compared to everything else that's going on with the system. It's not even a network problem. We've sent it cross country, and had it pop out the other end. You can have Nick in a motion capture stage and me with Unreal. We should do that, by the way, Nick. Let's do that as a second hour. So,
yeah.
I have an Unreal
with the Manus gloves.
Yeah. But I have an Unreal system here. We'll get the setup in the next 2 months. Within the next 2 months, maybe faster, but we'll see. But we'll set it up where I'm sitting here in an Unreal system. Nick is in Philadelphia, and I'm watching an Unreal space working, but the motion capture's being generated in Philadelphia, and I think that's totally doable. I know that's totally doable. We've done things like it in the past, so yeah,
absolutely. And we've done setups here where Unreal Engine has the ability to have multiple users using a single session. So just like multiple users can be in a single video game at once, and they're all on different Xboxes and PCs all over the world, that's facilitated by Unreal Engine. So we had a scenario where we were doing a shoot here in the studio on our projection screen for virtual production in camera VFX, and a lighting supervisor in Tokyo, VPN'd in and was, literally controlling the position of the sun for the scene. And, it's like you said, it's just data. That's really trivial to handle.
I wanted Alex to close the ailerons, or put the ailerons down and close the cockpit.
Yeah, exactly. Nick, thank you so much for your time. This is really great.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks to the rest of the panelists. I can't do this without you. Great first hour, great second hour. Thanks to the producers for all the great questions. You keep it running. This is a really short show without your help. So thank you for throwing those questions into the first hour and the second hour. And thanks to the incredible crew on the back end that develops the software and manages the hardware and manages the shows and actually runs the show every single day, 7 days a week. We really appreciate it, and we couldn't do any of it without you. If we had traveled around to ask these questions in person, the Tualatin Traversal, 46,000 miles we would have covered. That is 74,000 kilometers, and that is 366 million bananas for scale. All right, let's go ahead and jump into After Hours.
But they're virtual bananas.
Yeah, the virtual bananas, I just don't know.
Are they real bananas or unreal bananas? That's the question.
I hear that there's not as much potassium in the Unreal bananas.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for the electrolytes, you're not going to find them there. It's just polygons. Thanks, Nick. Talk to you in a little bit. All right, see you.
Bye-bye.
Nice to see you, Nick. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
I'd rather be in Philadelphia.